This is music, and this is the 2026 AC/DC tag. Recently, George G from George G's Room of Rock initiated the 2026 AC/DC tag. If you don't know George G's Room of Rock, it's a physical music media themed channel right here on YouTube, and it's a great channel at that. He covers everything rock, so pretty much everything from classic rock and hard rock all the way to extreme metal. And he's a CD guy, so if you are rock curious and you are a CD enthusiast, check out George G's Room of Rock. He has a very diverse collection of CDs. And like I said, it's a great channel. Check it out, you won't regret it. So yeah, he initiated the 2026 AC/DC tag not too long ago. He has 15 prompts for us. And AC/DC is my second favorite band of all time, right after Iron Maiden. So obviously I want to take part in an AC/DC tag. Of course I do. So let's get down to business. The first AC/DC album I ever heard was this one here, Flick of the Switch, and it's actually this very cassette tape that I heard. It's the first time I ever heard an AC/DC album. So technically the first AC/DC song I heard was Rising Power, which is the first track on this album, at least this copy I have. In reality, the first AC/DC song I heard was some other song from this album because this was a tape my parents had lying around in their collection of music. And they gave it to me because I was getting into heavy metal music and hard rock. And when I got it from my parents, the tape had not been rewound. So I just popped it into the cassette deck and pressed play, and it was in the middle of Brian Johnson's Scream. So whatever song that was the first song I ever heard. But I guess technically it's Rising Power, and this is the first AC/DC album I ever heard. I would say Vanda and Young, who did most of the very early material by AC/DC, and I think they also did Blow Up Your Video, which I think doesn't have the greatest production in the world, but those old AC/DC albums from the Bon Scott era that Vanda and Young produced, I think they did a great job on that. Also think that Bruce Fairbairn did a pretty good job on The Razor's Edge. As it happens, the AC/DC albums that I think sound the worst in terms of production, that's Flick of the Switch. The music is great. I'm not a big fan of the production. And Fly on the Wall, which I think were produced by AC/DC themselves. And then Blow Up Your Video. The music is great on all those albums. I just think they have the weakest production, or better, they have a style of production that doesn't appeal to me, and it's that thin, reverby, echoey kind of 80s sounding production. But hey, they are from the 80s, so it makes sense. But I would highlight Vanda and Young and Bruce Fairbairn as the producers that um, did the band justice in the studio. I don't know how many times I've seen them live. I think maybe only once. I mean, I seem to remember having seen them live more times, but I've seen them live at least once, and that was on the Black Ice tour, and I think that was a great show. I caught them live at the Parken in Copenhagen. Great show. So at least once, but something tells me more, but I actually can't remember. Let's just go with once. I would go with Little Lover from High Voltage. You got the international edition, and you got the Aussie edition here. Yeah, Little Lover. Um, I mean, most of AC/DC's love songs are pretty sleazy, and even in Little Lover, there is like kind of uh, a line on a wet patch. Was it Coca-Cola? Like a wet patch on your seat? Was it Coca-Cola, or was it something more biological? Yeah, this might be an odd choice, but I'm gonna go with the Razor's Edge. And the reason is that back when it came out, we would play this at parties in school, and when my classmates would throw parties in private, we would sometimes play the Razor's Edge. And I also remember us just sitting around in school listening to it. So this is one that I have experienced being played at a party, and we would have a blast whenever it was played. So that's why I'm going to go with the Razor's Edge. I think I'm going to go with Stevie Young replacing, sadly, Malcolm Young. Um, but Stevie Young was a really good replacement because he had filled in for Malcolm Young a couple of times before when Malcolm Young had some health problems, and I think at some point when he was in rehab or something. So, Stevie Young already pretty much knew the drill, and he was family as well, so he fit right into the band. So I would say he is the best replacement. I don't really have a lot of AC/DC paraphernalia apart from some AC/DC t-shirts, and I used to have a pair of AC/DC socks. I only have one box set, and that's this one here. That's a box set version of Power Up, and there is a button somewhere behind this flap you can press, and the box will play one of the songs from the album. It's out of batteries now, so I can't show you how it works, but this is basically the only AC/DC box that I have, so that's what I'm gonna show you. There you go. On an emotional level, I guess, I mean, I can only imagine this to be the case. The lowest point would be when Bon Scott passed away, and also when Malcolm Young's health started to really decline and he passed away as well. I can imagine that those 2 points were the lowest points in their careers emotionally. In terms of an album, I'm gonna go with Stiff Upper Lip. It's by no means a bad album, but it's an album I don't enjoy that much, and that's because it's more blues oriented. There's always been a blues element to AC/DC, but on this one they go really into the blues, and I'm a big fan of blues music, but it just means that this one is a little bit more low energy than AC/DC albums typically are, and so it doesn't really draw me in that much. There's some good songs on here for sure, and I do know people that really like this exactly because it's so bluesy. But to me, it's the least engaging um, AC/DC album to me. I'm kind of caught between Big Balls from Dirty Deeds Done Dirt Cheap and the Boogeyman from Ball Breaker or Hard as a Rock from Ball Breaker. It would just be fun to imagine this being played at a funeral. Um, but maybe from Blow Up Your Video, maybe that's the way I want to rock and roll, maybe that's a little bit more appropriate. But I wouldn't want it to be a super serious song. I would want it to be a fun song. Uh, Anyways, there you go. I'm gonna be a party pooper here and say none. I don't think there's any band that has truly captured the AC/DC sound. Yes, Crocus got pretty close, but I still don't think they captured the AC/DC sound. And don't get me wrong, I love Crocus. I even like the Blitz and Change of Address, which are quite unpopular Crocus albums. Even some of the prog stuff they did before they turned into a more hard rocking band. But I don't think there's any band that has really captured the AC/DC sound and the AC/DC style. There are lots of bands that have, I guess, mastered the art of throwing in cool AC/DC like riffs into their music. I can think of a couple of songs by Dirty Looks, for example, and Disneyland After Dark also have some pretty cool AC/DC like riffs on No Fuel Left for the Pilgrims and also Risking It All. So there are lots of bands who have cool AC/DC style riffs, but um, I don't think there's any band that has ever captured that AC/DC style. Yeah, how about Axl Rose? Just kidding, but I think I'm in a minority because I have seen some footage of Axl Rose, um, singing for AC/DC while Brian Johnson was taking care of his hearing problems. And I think he did a very good job. So I'm in a minority here, but I do think that if they ever were to replace Brian Johnson, I think they should go for someone with a completely different singing style, just like they did with Brian Johnson when he took over from Bon Scott when Bon Scott passed. So I'm thinking, I know some of you are going to shit your pants now, and some of you are going to hate me for this, but how about John Corabi? That would be really cool with his dark and gravelly voice. I can him singing the Boogeyman. How about that? I think that would be really cool. I know everybody else in the whole world are going to come after me for this now and torch down my house and whatever. I don't know, but I'm going to go with John Corabi because why not? Yeah, this one was actually easy for me. Again, like in the Iron Maiden uh, tag, depending on how we define a deep track. Is it one they don't play live very often? Is it one from an album that never got a single release? Is it one that is just obscure? Um, how do we define a deep track? But the reason why I'm holding up a Highway to Hell is that it was very easy for me, and that's Touch Too Much from Highway to Hell. It's one of those AC/DC songs that are kind of different, and it's still a very awesome song. And it was one of the first songs I learned to play on the guitar. I don't think they released the same album over and over again. If you listen to their discography from beginning to end, you will definitely hear changes and an evolution. And yes, they do have a very consistent style, but there are a lot of different details from album to album. For example, the first albums, the very early albums they put out with Bon Scott, had a lot of boogie rock going on, which you don't really hear, I would say, anymore on AC/DC albums. And then, of course, you have an album like this one here, Stiff Upper Lip Again, which is more of a blues rock album than an all-out hard rock album. So this is quite different from uh, a lot of their other stuff. And then you also have, in terms of production, you got some differences. You have that kind of raw, but almost kind of clean, still raw, but clean production on the early albums. And then, of course, on For Those About to Rock right here. And also Back in Black, you have kind of a bigger production, if you know what I mean. So, so that's also a factor. I think we have to consider the production, and of course, you have the albums like again, Flick of the Switch, and also Fly on the Wall, and again, Blow Up Your Video, which have a more of a thin and tinny, very reverby and echoey production. Also quite different. And I would say that on this album here, the music is quite heavy. They have a lot of kind of heavy metal elements on here. It's still an AC/DC hard rock album, but it sounds heavier to me. And then you have Power Up, which has some interesting riffs and melodies and stuff that I certainly haven't heard on any other AC/DC album. So I think it's basically a misconception when people say that AC/DC release the same album over and over again. There are differences from album to album in terms of the music, in terms of the production as well. And each album typically also has like a song, maybe more, that are kind of unique and different from the rest of the album. So yeah, I don't think that's a true statement, if I'm being completely honest. And then the second part, uh, should they release just one more album? I would say if they have material enough and they feel it's good enough and they want to release one album, more albums, why not? I'm sure they would be enjoyable. Um, but if they decide to call it a day and hang up their coats, they can do so proudly. And I think this is a fine album to go out on. Again, Power Up. So, yeah, if they feel like it, if they have the material, why not? But if they don't feel like it, I mean, they can retire with honor. I would say that just looking at it from my perspective, they are way up there at the top. Obviously, they're my second favorite band of all time. And this means that what I'm going to say now will piss off a lot of people. I rank AC/DC higher than the Rolling Stones. Doesn't mean I don't like the Rolling Stones. I rank them higher than the Beatles, although I grew up listening to the Beatles. I rank them higher than Led Zeppelin and, a lot of those classic bands, uh, higher than Aerosmith and so on and so forth. To me, they are way up there at the top because they're my second favorite band. First of all, I don't have a favorite out of the two eras. I like the Bon Scott era and the Brian Johnson era equally. There was a time when I liked the uh, Bon Scott era better, but then I remember just saying to myself, like, you go around saying that you like Bon Scott and Bon Scott era better, but is that true? And, I kind of admitted to myself, I actually don't have a preference. I like them both equally. Anyways, my favorite album from the Bon Scott era is 30 Deeds Done Dirt Cheap, international version. And here we have the Aussie version. Out of the two, I do like the international version better just because that's the one I was used to, if you know what I mean. When it comes to Brian Johnson, I've already showed this in this video, but that is the Razor's Edge. So, yeah, there you go. That was my response to George G's AC/DC Tech 2026 edition. Who knows? Maybe there will be a 27 one. I don't know. As I said, go and check out George G's Room of Rock and subscribe to his channel, like his videos, and all that good stuff. For now, thanks for watching.